Hello, in the following video we will learn about various running water landforms. So generally when the river flows through a certain region, it has three stages: the upper course, the middle course and the lower course. The initial stage is the upper course and the final stage is the lower course. They can also be called as the youthful stage, the mature stage and the old stage. The upper course is the youthful stage and the lower course is the old stage. And in the course of the river, it forms various kinds of landforms, and generally the landforms can be classified into two types, which are erosional landforms and depositional landforms. First, let us learn about various erosional landforms. So this is the first erosional landform, that is the valley. So valleys initially start as small narrow rills. Rills are like small miniature valleys which are formed on the surface of the land, and eventually they grow into um, such kind of valleys which are like very vast. So there are different kinds of valleys like V-shaped valley, gorge, canyon, etc. The following picture is of a gorge. So the difference between a gorge and canyon is that the width from top to bottom of a gorge is constant, while in that of a canyon it's increasing to the top. So the width at the top of the canyon is somewhat wider than the bottom. Same is the case with the V-shaped valley also. So the next landform which we'll learn is the plunge pool. And so in plunge pool, what happens? Whenever there is a waterfall in the course of a river, the water is because the water is falling from like a certain amount of height, it forms a pool at the bottom. So and then we get such kind of landform. And the next one is potholes. And generally, what happens in this case is once a small and shallow depression forms, pebbles and boulders get collected in those depressions and get rotated by flowing water, and constantly the depressions grow in dimensions. A series of such depressions eventually join, and the stream valley gets deepened. So, and the next landform which we'll learn is entrenched meanders. So let me first explain what is meandering. So whenever the river is flowing through its course, so what happens is it is like, for example, in this we can see the meander, which is like a curve in the course of the river which is formed. So in entrenched meander, what happens is the river is entrenching itself in the ground by eroding the ground. So this is called as entrenched meandering. This is also one of the kind of erosional landform. Next we'll learn about river terraces. So in river terraces, what happens is whenever there is flooding, the river rises up and then deposits some erodes some material from the bank of the river, and when a number of times it happens, so terraces are formed. For example, T3 is the first terrace which is formed when the first time the river is T4. Sorry, T4 is the first. T4 is the first terrace which is formed because of the erosion of the river when floods were happening. And then second time it's T3, and third time it's T2, and the fourth time it's T1. So these T1, T2, T3 are called as terraces. And whenever T3 and on both left and right side are, as you can see, matched, such kind of terraces are called as paired terraces. While T4, as you can see, is not matched on the left side, so it is called as unpaired terrace. So with this we'll end the erosional landforms and we'll start with depositional landforms. So the first depositional landform we learn is alluvial fan. So generally alluvial fans are formed when streams flowing from higher levels break into foot slope plains of low gradient. So whenever water is flowing from a steep slope, so when it breaks into the plain, an alluvium is deposited across the plain, forming an alluvial fan. So the next depositional landform is a delta. So deltas are like alluvial fans but develop at different locations, that is at the end of the river. So they are generally formed near the sea. So the load carried by the rivers is dumped and spread into the sea. If this load is not carried away far into the sea or distributed along the coast, it spreads and accumulates as a low cone. So unlike the alluvial fans, the deposits making up deltas are very well sorted and clear stratification is there. So in alluvial fan, the stratification is not clear. So what happens is the erosional, the deposit which is being there is there in the alluvial fan. They are not very stratified. So there may be bigger deposits, larger boulders at the initial alluvial fan, and the smaller deposits in middle, and again larger deposits at the end. So there is no clear stratification. While in deltas, what happens is there is clear stratification. Initially, uh, there are somewhat coarser grains, and at the near the sea, there are more finer grains. So the next depositional landforms we learn are floodplains. So floodplain, what is whenever within the course of a river, whenever there is flooding, the water reaches until a certain distance. The maximum distance until where the water is reaching is called as a floodplain. So in this, from the left to right, all the green part is what you can consider as floodplain. And the next erosional landform which we learn is natural leaves. So in natural leaves, what happens is whenever there is a flood, the river rises and deposits some of the coarser grains sediments at the edges of the bank. So as you can see in the B part of the figure, so from the initial there is a slight from the initial figure there is a slight increase in deposition at the ends of the bank. So, and in the third stage, after many times floods are happening, so there is more and more accumulation at the end of the bank, and this accumulation, this deposition is known as natural leaves. So natural leaves have coarser grains, and the finer grains are deposited at the uh, outer parts of the floodplain. So the next we learn about point bars. So in this figure, you can see the point bar is something which is protruding out into the river. So it is also a depositional landform. It is caused due to the variation in speed of the river from one side of the curve to the other side of the curve. What happens is there is deposition at the concave side of the curve, while on the convex side of the curve there is erosion. So the deposition at the concave side of the curve causes the formation of a point bar. And some other landforms which are formed by the river are Oxbow Lake. So as I said earlier, so meandering is these curves which are formed, and whenever sometimes what happens, the deposition causing in between the curve makes the curve to get separated from the main course of the river, and which eventually leads to the formation of a lake. So that lake formed is known as Oxbow Lake, as you can see in the following picture. So these are some of the landforms which are formed by the running water. Thank you.